Good evening, dear participants, respected resource person. Today we have Dr. G. Balasindil Kumar as resource person for this session. Sir has completed MTech, MBA, and MSc Psychology. Sir has completed PhD in HR, and Sir has also cleared NET examination. And Sir is having 16 years of teaching experience. Sir is expert in HRM, strategic management, supply chain management. Sir has published 38 papers in reputed journal. Today we are going to have a wonderful session from the Sir. Welcome you, Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Over to you, sir.
Uh,
You
Thank you.
can
Thank
continue.
you so much for a nice introduction, sir.
Yes.
First, I would like to thank our management for giving me such an opportunity to interact with outside people. So, it's my great pleasure in thanking them. I would like to thank our dean, Dr. Aloysius Edward, who has been behind the scene motivating us to take such kind of programs which could benefit outsiders, not only Jaintians but also outsiders. And it is again a very good collaborative learning for us too as a teacher, exposing to other people. I would like to thank our HOD, Dr. MK Baby, for his continuous involvement in upgrading, taking so much of care on us and allowing us to participate in such kind of programs. Thank you. So today, my job is to facilitate related to human resource management. I hope you had a session yesterday on the introductory part of human resource management. So I'll continue from there. We will be continuing from there. Um, so the topics that is how will we proceed is I'll facilitate theory parts and now the topics that is very much relevant. So after that we will have a few of the questions that has already appeared and we'll try to solve them. So that is a plan for the day. Um, so we'll just look onto the topic. So these are all topics that is there in the net. So one is related to strategic human resource management. The next one is related to competency mapping and balance scorecard. The next one is career planning and development, performance management, and the appraisal. We'll see what are trade unions and what is collective bargaining. We have OD and OD interventions, and even OC is also there. Organizational change is also there. So we have something related to skill development and talent management. So we have employee engagement and work-life balance. Industrial relations are there, IHRM is there, international human resource management, and we'll end up with the green HRM. So we'll before getting into to understand what is strategic role of human resource management, we'll see the basic comparison how this HRM comes. Okay, so this is the chart that tells you about the difference between personal management and human resource management. The reason for me putting the slide is in the earlier paper there were some questions related to the personal management and its difference from the human resource management. And the next portion of this, the next upgraded version is strategic human resource management. So after this we are in the strategic human resource management. It is treated there since it is a strategic function. So when you look onto the personal management, I'll just give you the crisp about what is personal management. Personal management treat the human as something like manpower as some machines or tools who supporting the production. That's it. So it does not go beyond that. Okay, taking care of the employees and other things. So what is the actual concept here in personal management is the men come, he works and gets the salary and goes. That's it. So nothing more than that related to that. But when you take human resource management here, the manpower is treated as one of the resources. They treat them as an asset to an organization, and you feel that there is a no, there is an importance of holding the employees and taking care of them holistically. Okay, it is not only taking care of him but even taking care of his family too at a times. Okay, so that is the whole perspective of human resource management. So this is something more related to piecemeal, as it is said. It is more related to piecemeal, and it is a holistic. It is integrated, more of integration. Okay, so that is how from the personal management and human resource management has developed. But nowadays in corporate, when you look on practically, both are interchangeably used. But according to the theory, there is a clear cut differentiation between personal management and human resource management. So the next one is this human resource management is going to act separately? No, it is not going to act separately, because it has to align with the organizational vision and mission. So whatever that the organization want to achieve in terms of its goals and other stuff, this HRM should again align with uh, those kind of strategies. Okay. So I'll show you how. Okay, so this is how no, the HR gets aligned, how it gets aligned with the strategy of the organization. Okay, so we have mission. More than that, we have something called as a vision. So from vision, now we break into mission. Okay, so mission talks about the existence of the organization, why it exists, and other things. From that, so how to achieve those things, you fix up your goals and objectives. So how will you achieve your goals and objectives? We formulate strategies. Okay, so how the strategies are formulated and implemented is through the organizational structure. Who forms an organizational structure? It is only the people. Okay, so how it happens is you have goals and objectives. Those we formulate a methodology. That methodology is what we call it as strategy. Okay, this strategy goes along with the structure, the organization structure. In organizational structure, we'll have a complete mapping about who's going to do what job, what are the different jobs available in an organization, and who's going to do that. Okay, so this is related to the skills and knowledge that is possessed by the employee to take care of that responsibility and deliver the responsibility. So this clearly shows you how this HR, actually, like human resource management, is mapped with the organizational strategy. Okay, so this is so much important, because the earlier kind, it was a different story when you look on to that. I mean to say, like, no, a few people have a misconception that no, this is nothing related to the organization management and other things. It is not so. All the things that we do in human resource management are absolutely aligned with the organizational goals and mission, and of course mission, vision also. So we have different areas, different functions are there in human resource management. This slide is again an important thing, where in one question paper they were asking about what are the possible human resource areas or the functions that can be outsourced. Okay, so these are all few things which can be outsourced. Take example of a payroll services, the services like check preparation, direct deposits, now EFT, tax filing, tax social security, reporting services. So all these things can be outsourced to the other people. The next one is related to recruiting services. So you have a lot of consultancies, who take care of that and do that. So even the compensation design, the third person can do, and screening of the applicants also can be done by the outsiders. Why certain functions are outsourced by the organization is, so they could probably take care of their building their core competencies. So when you take competency, we have two things. One is core competencies and distinct competencies. Core competencies or the organizational strength, or their organization strength, which they are very good at. Okay, so they cannot compromise with other things. So consider that instead of me doing some jobs which could be done by the others, now I could probably outsource it, so that I could concentrate on my core competencies. That is the reason why the organizations goes for outsourcing. Here we have other services which could be probably outsourced. So this gives a clear cut picture. This is one picture which clearly gives a complete structure about human resource planning and all the functions related to human resource. This could be a great help when you prepare for the examinations. So how it happens is, first one, I consider there is a vacancy in the organization. What I try to do is I need to fill it up. So what is the procedure, where I start is, now I start with scanning the environment. I do an environmental analysis, either inside or outside the organization. So what I'll be doing is I'll be searching for a potential candidate who's already working in the organization. So I could probably fill in the higher position by giving a promotion or a shift, not like that. So that is related to the internal assessment of organizational workforce. And scanning the external environment deals with you trying to get a potential employee from the outsiders. So this two scannings are done. So at the end of the scanning, what will be my output is I'll get a list or a pool of candidates, a possible candidates, where I could possibly identify these are all the probable future employees for my organization. So how I decide how many numbers are there and other stuffs, it is related to human resource supply and demand. It is either in your organization or outside the organization. You check with whether I could possibly fill in with my internal sources, or I should definitely depend on the outside sources. So based on that, I make a trade-off to decide how many people has to be recruited and how many people can be promoted. Fresh candidates, how many people can be promoted who are there already working in the organization. So that is how it goes. So consider that you have a surplus of employees in the organization. Then what happens is you try to expand your supply chain, where you can probably allocate few activities to the people who are not utilized properly. I mean to say the people who does not have an enlarged job profile. So that is what we call it as workforce realignment. So with the available sources, what is that I do? Okay, so the next one is related to the job design. So here there is something called a job design, job satisfaction, job performance, job rotation. So all these things will help us now in carrying out whether the workflow is happening perfectly or not. So through that I could probably take care of that. So the next one is JD and JS, which is job description and job specification. Hope most of you will be knowing it. So the output of the job analysis is this job description and job specification. So job description talks about the job, what are the content, who has to do, and the related things, how to do a particular job, everything. So that is JD will talk about that. JS is job specification, which talks about what is a required skill for an employee to perform a job. So both these things are the probable output of job analysis. So at the end of the job analysis, I'll get this two output. The next part is what we call it as job evaluation. So what is job evaluation is you try to find the content, I mean like the worth of the particular job, so which will be of great use when we go in for a compensation plan. So that is the other output of job analysis. Okay, so this gives a complete picture about how HRP goes. The reason for me is with respect to your exams, again this place, because there are many words here, now the possibility is more for a question. Okay, the next one is now all these things are completely aligned with the organizational strategy. All this functions of HR is completely aligned with the strategy. Okay, consider that you talk about consider your mission is to generate employment. Okay, I want to generate employment as such. Okay, then in the HR strategy, I need to have an objective related to employment generation. How much of the employment I have generated. So the activities across your organization related to HR should be aligned with the organization strategy. So when I am doing that, then the HR has a whole strategic perspective. Okay, so this is a strategic view of human resource. Okay, so here we treat employees as a asset to the organization, where we feel that there is an increase of value or to the organization, either in terms of the investment, or no, in terms of no, adding value to the organization. So here, the successful strategic human resource management starts with identification of strategic needs. What are the strategic needs? And the next most important thing is employee participation is very critical. Hope you must be knowing about the workers participation in management. So one example is this employee participation, how is that they take care, all these things. And the next one is we need to have a very systematic kind of the approach. I mean to say that consider you're working, so the targets need to be very clear, the timing need to be very clear, the compensation according to the work need to be very clear. Okay, so a complete kind of transparency will happen when no strategy is being viewed, okay, in human resource management. So this is a probable difference between traditional human resource and the strategic human resource. So here it is particularly based on the relationships. It is particularly based on the partnership when you look onto strategic human resource partnerships. And here the focus is particularly on the employee relationship. And when you look onto the role of HR as such, as a human resource manager, what is the role in a particular traditional is it is only transactional, or now what happens is you transactional, I meant like you come and you take up your responsibility and deliver. Beyond that, we don't work. But in strategic human resource management, what you do is you take the things to the next level. Consider that a potential employee is there who takes up a very less kind of responsibility. I can identify him, and the job enlargement or enrichment can be done to him, so that now he gets transformed. So here the role of HR in strategic management is enormous, and it has a very huge scope. And when you look on to traditional HR, it is reactive, and when you look on to strategic HR, it is more of proactive, and it focuses more on to long term. It focuses more on to the long term, starting from the short term. And the next one is related to the control. Here it is bureaucratic, and here it is organic. And when you look onto the job design as such, it is more of divisional and other things. And here the job design is more, I mean to say, the responsibility and the commitment of HR will be more here in strategic side compared to the traditional side. So that is how no, traditional HR is different from strategic HR. The next one is what are the barriers to strategic HR. So these are all the barriers to strategic HR. We have when you look on to only for a short term mentality, consider management is running under only on the current performance and they do not focus on the future, then it is a big challenge for HRI, particularly with the strategic HRM, because strategic HRM focus more onto the long term and long term benefits. And if the HR is not able to think strategically, then it cannot be done. And the appreciation, when there is a lack of appreciation, when there is a failure to understand all these things. So these are all few barriers to strategic HR. So the clear here the key area is we need to know a clear cut differentiation between strategic HR and traditional HR. That is more a key point here as far as our net exam is concerned. Okay, so the next one is related to the what is the outcome of strategic HR. So here we have effective management of staffing, retention, and turnover. So since you have a very strategic thinking about your workforce, you know that how many people will remain. So related to retention, you know how many people I need to look for outside. What could be the future production, or what could be the next year plan, what could be the next year compensation. Okay, how I can use of people effectively. When we look on with a very strategic focus, when we look on the very strategic focus, so this all happens from the market end. Consider that your consumer needs are keeping on varying, and your marketing research supports that these are all the probable products that you could produce. Then I need to map the production skills or the skills needed to produce a particular good with the available man source, with the available manpower, so that I could probably match up with the customer need and demand. Okay, so it is more focused. So I could say that the benefit of strategic HR is particularly enormous, very enormous. So this is a model of strategy human resource management. uh, so we have corporate strategy and business unit strategy. Okay, so corporate strategy, it is this is the strategy for the whole organization. Consider it's an MNC. It is from the central view. So based on the business unit, this strategy will change. This business unit strategy will change based on the, consider that the business unit is in India. Okay, so the again you have one more business unit in Canada. Then the business unit strategy will change. Okay, the business unit will be changed, but it will be in align with the corporate strategy. That is more important here. So from the business unit strategy, because I need to localize my HR policies and strategies based on the current location, based on the current location. So based on your business unit strategy, HR strategies are formulated. Okay, so how this business unit strategies are based? It is based on the internal environment, might be the culture. I mean to say, this is organization culture, the structure, organization structure, what kind of politics, skills, and past strategies. So this is an internal thing. The next one is external environment, the competition, government regulation. From the government to government, country to country, the government regulation changes. So based on that, I need to customize my business unit strategy. So that is how it is. From this business strategy, I can derive the HR strategy, and this HR strategy need to be aligned with the business unit strategy. So based on that, you decide, based on your strategy, you design your staffing, training, performance appraisal, compensation, labor relationship. So this will give you a complete detail about how what is HRM and how it actually works. The next one, the role of HR, human resource manager. He actually act as a strategic execution partner in strategic human resource management. So he is responsible for defining the organization structure of a model of how the company, the way that they do the business. So the biggest responsibility is defining the organization structure, and he must be accountable for conducting any kind of organizational audit. So what happens here in strategic HR? The managers HR, the roles, the responsibility, it enhances, it enlarges when you compare it to the traditional way of taking the roles. Here it is enlarged roles for human resource people as such. So these are all the new functional role of for the HR when you when you take care of strategic human resource. So here it focuses more onto the business level outcomes. So his strategic focus will be now in the upgradation level, where he must focus more onto the business level rather than the HR input level. And he should be more of strategic core competence rather than a market follower. So this is the role. The next one is strategic competence are more important than the functional competencies. The next one is he need to have a systematic perspective. You should know if this happens, what could be the cause, that cause and effect relationship kind. HR should know. This is an enlarged role. So this is about strategic HR. This is about strategic HR related how it is also. I'm moving on to the next topic. Any clarifications you want, you can put in the chat box. If you want any clarifications, you can put in the chat box. You can put in the chat box if you have any clarifications. Else we will proceed with the next topic, what we call it as competency mapping. So we'll move on to the next one, what you call it as competency mapping. So the concept of competency mapping is how the skills or the competency or the capability of an employee is mapped to the job profile that he does. or vice versa. Like you have a job where you have the job specification very clear, saying that this is a knowledge, this is a skill, this is a qualification required for doing a particular job. How I am going to map that to a employees or the prospective manpower to perform a particular task. So here, so when it started, why I have put some years is like, in the earlier question paper they were asking on years also, years of when it started and other thing. So it started with David McClelland's, where he was insisting to recruit people in 1960 itself. He was more insisting people, the corporates, to recruit the people more based on the competencies rather than they score the test or the marks that they score in their graduations. So he was the first one to talk about the competency based hiring in 1960s. And later on, as his experience grows, he has developed a method how to predict the human performance for that. Okay, so he was the first one who developed a system of predicting human performance. And the next one is, now he was working more onto that and published an article in 1973, which was very noteworthy, and now where the entire world looked on, where all the corporate people have started looking onto this idea of competency hiring. So the key men here is McClelland, that you should remember, you should not forget. Okay, so the next stage was the behavior event interviewing. It is one of the inventories, I could say, what we literally call it as a questionnaire. Okay, it was developed by McGear to map the competency. So slowly it started with mapping the behavior of the employees with the jobs that they do, and later on it was even insisted in during the performance appraisal or potential appraisal related to that. And the LNT took it into their assessment center in 1975. So they were using this competency mapping. So the next one is related to the definitions of what is competencies. So the competency as such is the skills or knowledge that is required for performing a given task or an activity or a role. So there are different definitions given by people. So United Nations Industrial Development Organization 2002 has given this kind of a definition, which says that a competency is a set of skills, related knowledge, and attributes that allows an individual to successfully perform a task. Okay, so that is the definition. The next one is ranking 2002. You have another definition. So the key point here is the skills and the behavior. The skills and the behavior. And here, when you look onto this definition, here it talks about the set of skills, related knowledge, and the attribute. So the definition varies. The next one is in 1970, which is much older, which talks about the characteristics of a person that results in effective superior performance. So these are all different examples, or I could say the definition of competencies. Okay, so the competency might take any one of the following forms. It could be knowledge that a particular employee possesses, the next one is attitude. The next one is attitude. The next one is skill. Okay, so these are all the competencies that is required. The next one is the characteristics of other characteristics of an individual, or this motives, values, traits, and self-concept. So these are all the other characteristics of an individual, which is related to the competencies. So you take example of motives. take example of a motive. Consider an employee who has a very good potential, but he will not deliver at the most. His motive is, no, I'm just getting the salary, why I need to work more, though the potential is there. So the competency is not purely based on the skills or knowledge, but it cannot be which sometimes it cannot be casted, I mean to say, which cannot be showed off, might be related to their motives or values or traits. So these are all the other characters of individuals which affects the competency mapping, or which affects the competency show of a particular employee. So next we'll come to what is meant by competency mapping. What is meant by competency mapping? It is a process of identification of a competencies required to perform successfully a given job or a role of a set of a task at a given period of time. So this is identification of competencies that is required. So competency includes everything like knowledge, skills, and your attitude. Everything it is there included. So what is a identification that you have based on that? The next one is it consists of breaking a given role or job into its constant task or activities and identify the competencies needed to perform the same successfully. So here it also says that identifying it and checking with whether that competency is required for doing a particular job. That is competency mapping. So there are a few other things here. There are a few other things. I think one has put like, is it knowledge, skills, or basic characteristics? No, see, when you look onto knowledge, skills, these are all acquired, which is not innovative. I mean, which is not inside, which is not inside, which is developed due to my exposure to the outside world. Okay, but when you look onto my motive, which is inside, motive, it depends on me. Consider that I'm given more of salary, I would like to express more of more of thing at my workplace. Consider that I feel I'm working more and I'm not getting the salary, that could probably demotivated inside. So the competency is that which is needed, which I need to develop based on that. Though sometimes I will develop, but I will not showcase my knowledge or competency at the workplace. That is because of my motive, might be. Okay, so that is there. So here we have a competency map. We have competency maps here. What are competency map? It is a list of individual competency that represents the factor. So it is something like a list. It is something like a list, okay, where I will have all the competencies that is required for a for delivering a particular job. So here, what is competency mapping? A process of individual uses to identify and describe competencies that are most critical to success in a work situation or a work role. Okay. What is competency profiling is? It is a process of identifying the knowledge, skills, ability, attitude, and judgment required for effective performance in a particular occupation or profession. So here you are identifying what are all the required things. Here you are trying to match things, and here you know that a particular list is there, which could probably be the most probable, which we usually say like key result areas, KRAs we say, or key performance indicators we say. So with that I could probably match which is the best, what kind of a competency is required for performing a particular job. So the competency this is done for the following functions. Gap analysis talks about what is expected and what does a employee perform Okay, so through the process of competency mapping, I can very well know what are the skills that is required, or what are the skills that is all underutilized. So both the things it is possible here in gap analysis. The next one is the people will have a role clarity will be there. What I need to do, what I should do, what is not expected, what is expected from the employee perspective. When you look on to succession planning, growth plans, succession planning is you identifying the people who will I mean to say who will take care of the next leadership, something related to that. The growth plans which is relevant to the career, restructuring when you are expanding your business, when you are upgrading your technology, when your restructuring is happening. During that time, I could probably identify who are all the people who have enough competency for particular thing and other things. So it is mostly used for the upgradation, I could say, or this competency mapping will definitely take the organization to the next big level. So these are all the steps in competency mapping. So first one is deciding the position for which competency need to be mapped. Okay, so competency mapping differs from position to position. I mean to say, take example of a worker who is working in a shop floor. Okay, so the competency mapping is different. When you look onto a supervisor, the next level, the competency mapping is different. So based on that, we have these steps. So first one is you need to decide on the position. Then next one is you need to locate that position in the organizational structure. Okay, in, where it is, where is that, because based on that I could probably identify how much important is that position in the organization structure. The next one is identifying the objective of the function or the department or the unit where the position is located. So I need to map up with the what is the objective of that particular department where this position is held. The next one is objectives of the role. I need to identify what is the objective of that particular role. It is related to the position. Why is that position exists? What is the main purpose of the role? Other things. So I'll get to know the objective. Here it is objective of the department as such and objective of this particular role as such. So when I'm identifying this, I'll also know what is the responsibility of that particular role. What is the responsibility? What are the deliverables of that particular role, so that it could help to achieve the departmental objectives. The next one is collecting the key performance area uh, of the position holder. So where are the areas which I could probably access? Take example, whether I could probably take no the regularity of the employee. Okay, or whether I could say his ability to work in the team, or whether I need to focus only on to the number of units that he produces. So based on the objective of the department, we will have to look onto this KRAs, key result areas, or key performance areas. KPAs or KRAs or same. Based on that, I need to decide on that. The next one is interview the position holder to the list and task activities. So now you actually go and interview them. Example, you are working on a position or competence map for a supervisor, then I'll start interviewing the supervisors, because to get the real world thing. The next one is related to the position holder to list the actual knowledge that is needed. So what are the knowledge that is needed to perform a particular job? Earlier it was measuring it. Here it is you forming the standard. Okay, standard of it is then. So if you have lot of positions, then the same process is repeated across, and for each position, for each task, you can probably consolidate the list of competencies that is required. So this is how a competency mapping is done. So this is a step. So in competency mapping, probably you can expect one question at least. The next one is the assessment and feedback for developing consistency competency mapping. So we have positions requirement. Where are the point where I'll be accessing it? Job design and the process design. So the process design deals with how the process. I mean, like how the conversion of material actually happen. Okay, so for that, what is the skill required and how it is related to the job design. The next one is related to the position fulfillment, which is particularly related to the job specification as such, how you recruit, qualification, how selection is done, what kind of orientation need to be given, all these things. The next one this competence will help you on promotion. Okay, and the next one is on the performance. So this is assessment and feedback for developing the consistencies. So what are the ways by which I can develop a competency mapping or a competency standard maps? By using a review of literature. Okay, you can look onto the already published thing where people might have already done and used. The next one is on the focus group, interviews, through interviews. The next one is behavioral event interviews, surveys, and observations. So these are all the different tools by which I could probably try to identify and develop competency mapping. So this is that is related to competency mapping. The next one is related to balance scorecard, and the next one is related to balance scorecard. Any clarification in competency mapping? If you want, you can stop here. We'll move on to the next one, which is called as balance scorecard. So the next topic is balance scorecard. So we will look on to the balance scorecard, what it is. So now this was developed by Kalpan in 1992 along with his colleague called Norton. Okay, so this is particularly used to map the performance, how you can achieve your strategic goal and other things. Okay, so how you can align other activities, how you can align your activities, how the stakeholders can be taken care and other things. I'll just go there directly. Yes, so here this is what we call it as balanced scorecard. So we have different areas here: finance, financial, internal business process, and you have learning and growth, and the customer. So what this balance scorecard talks about is how you are going to achieve your vision, or how you are going to formulate your strategy, keep your strategy thing by balancing all this four content here. So for first one, when you look on to finance as such, now how you can probably because the fate of any organization depends on the financial position of any organization. So how you are going to keep it growing, or how you are going to increase your investment or increase your business. Okay, on that. So this has to be probably supported by your long term goals, are you ready for the change, whether there is any kind of learning that happens always, and when there any growth is happening in the organization, whether you want to grow, whether you want to expand your business. So that is based on particularly on the customer needs. So here the the key area where it changes is customer. So when the customer needs and preference keep on changing, so I need to internally align my organization so that the customer is getting satisfied. So nobody does a business like what they like. They need to do a business which the customer needs, where there's a need for that, only I can do a particular business. So when you have such kind of a thing, so you have a good position, you have learning capability, adjusting, and the adaptability to change of new technology, everything is acceptable, so that now you could probably serve your customer to the best. And you also have internal business process which could probably satisfy all your stakeholders, and all your stakeholders will be very happy, and how you are going to excel at it. So when you have such kind of a thing, then you can probably map the business growth. So as it says, you take example here, say they have certain scores here. So what is the initiative, what are your objective, how much you're achieving it. So this is the perspective of balance scorecard. So we'll see uh, why to implement a balanced scorecard. So we will get a focus. So this as a picture shows, so you have many objectives are all there. So when I start working on this, I know that where are the areas where I am lacking actually. So for that, no, so I can increase my focus, I can increase my focus on the strategy and the result. If there is any deviation, it will be helpful for me to align the organization strategy with the people, with my employees on a day to day basis. It develops a complete transparency across the organization in the communication process. And based on that, I could probably design an incentive based pay when the scorecard shows it is very favorable. So for that I can use. And when I look onto the scorecard, it could probably give a comprehensive view of the performance of employees and the business. It increases employee satisfaction, everything. So it also helped me to streamline or upgrade my internal business process. So we will look on to more detail about the scorecard. So first one, when you look on to the financial thing in the organization. So here there are three possible things. They say three possible stages what is there. One is rapid growth, another one is sustain and harvest. So rapid growth shows how much opportunity you have to grow. You whether you can increase your further investment and other things related to that, it will show that. The next one is sustaining, is whether I could sustain, how I could probably sustain my current position in the market without any kind of a loss. So I will keep on moving at the same pace. The next one is harvesting, which talks more about liquidation of a particular business. When the position is weak and you feel that there are certain there are certain business process of your organization and cannot be remapped or revamped, then the best solution is, without facing any loss, we could probably go for stage by stage harvest, which is liquidation. So these are all the possible stages which is described in the balance scorecard. The next one is related to the customer. So it talks about how customer is going to get satisfied, what is the score, how I can retain the customer, what are the problem marketing strategies that I can go in for, what are the markets, what are the fresh gaps in the market which the customer, which could probably match with the customer needs and wants. So all these things. The next one is related to internal business process. So here this internal business process talks more about the operations. I mean to say the productions, your R&D department, whether they are keep on changing the new product, how far they are able to satisfy the customers and other things. So this is related to the internal business process. The next one is related to the learning and growth. This is more related to the human resource. Okay, so any kind of upgradation of a knowledge, any kind of a technology, that upgradation happens. Okay, so whether I have any strategic focus, the forward focus is there. Okay, so this is particularly concerned with the human capital, the information, the technology, and the organizational capital. So this is related to balance scorecard. Okay, so the next topic is career planning and development. So we have few set of definitions here related to career planning, what is meant by career. Okay, so a career, it is a throughout his working life, a person chooses throughout his working life. What is career planning? It is an ongoing process where the individual sets career goals and identifies the means to achieve them. That is a career plan. So we need to have a clear cut understanding on all these definitions. The next one is organizational career plan. The firm identify paths and activities of an individual employee as they develop. So a guy who joined as an ordinary worker, supervisor, manager, general manager. So how he goes within an organization. That is the organizational career plan. This career plan is done by the individuals. This organization career plan is done by the firm for an individual who is working inside the organization, in the organization. The next one is career path. So this is a flexi line of a movement through which an employee may move during the employment of a company. So this talks about the opportunities that an employee has, particularly in the organization. The next one is career development. So it is a formal approach used by the organization to help the people acquire the skills and experience needed to perform the current and future jobs. So this, when you look on the career path and the career development, so the career path talks about how he could now move in a particular line. This talks about how you can you move on to the next level by acquiring the required skills or knowledge that is needed. So these are all a few definitions related to career planning. The next one is something related to job security and career security. So this, when job security talks about the job loss within a particular company. When you look on to this is particularly within a company or where he works, that is job security. Career security is consider that I am a teacher, whether if I move to some other organization, whether I'll be able to survive, whether I have all those skills are there with me. That is career security. Okay, so the difference should be there, because one question paper was asking about mapping between these two. The next one is factors affecting career planning. So two things are there which affects. One is the life stage and the anchors. So what is the career impacted life stage? So this is one thing which affects the career planning. So it depends on this, in which stage I am in, actually, whether in growth stage, exploration, or an establishment, maintenance, or a decline stage. So this is one factor which affects the career. The next one is career anchors. The career anchors are there. So when you look onto this, we have competencies that is required, kind of managerial competencies or technical competencies, creativity, autonomy and independence, and technology competency. So all these things are there, which are all called as career anchors, which affects the career planning of an individual. So these are all the components that no, we need to take care when we are doing the career planning, whether an individual does or a HR does for his set of employees. Okay, so how the self-assessment happens is learning about oneself. Um, the next one is the strength, weakness of balance sheet, likes and dislikes service. So these are all three methods. These are all three methods of self-assessment of an individual about the career planning. So learning about oneself is related to now how he, what are the things that he knows about himself, what are his capabilities, whether he can particularly identify any kind of skills that is needed, or whether he is lagging and other things. This is for himself. The next one is balance sheet. When you look onto the balance sheet, so again, this is a self-evaluation procedure. This is a self-evaluation procedure. Here what happens is you'll be listing your strength and weakness. Okay, then you draw a down line in the middle of a sheet of a paper, and like one side you'll be writing your strength, another side you'll be writing the weakness. So you just count what are the number of weakness that you have, number of strength you have. Based on that, you learn what could be your potential, or how it could probably help in the career planning. So this is strength and weakness balance sheet. So that was developed by Benjamin Franklin, the philosopher who developed this balance sheet, which he called it strength and weakness balance sheet. The next one is likes and dislikes survey, which will be helpful for career planning, which will help you to list the thing like what are your likes, what are your dislikes, okay, whether the dislikes are particularly relevant to the job that you perform and other stuff related to that. So based on that, you could probably know how you could probably plan for a career planning. So again, you have again numerous online assessment tests are there on the web. You can go take some few tests on that, and I could probably plan for career. The next one is organizational career planning, which is done by the organization for the individual. So in the entry job, so it is actually an ongoing process. So the people will be always keeping in track what are the skills that he has developed, whether he can be promoted or shifted to some other job or something, like whether I can give him a job enlargement or a job enrichment. So all these things is possible when you take organizational career planning. So these are all the objectives why career planning has to be done. Effective development of available talents that I can take. So what happens is, it is something like retention is better than acquiring. Retention is better than acquiring. It is either for an employee or for a customer. Okay, so this is one thing that you can say, when the available talents are there, we can make use of them, and it helps the employees to know about their position, what could be the next. And now for employees, it is a great opportunity to focus more onto their career path. So what are the things that I could do? And the next one is, it demonstrates commitment to EEO, that is equal employment opportunities, equal employment opportunity for all the people in the organization. So the employee will have a clear cut idea that after 5 years I'll get a promotion, I'll get into the another job. What are the skills that I need to get in? So this will particularly improve the performance of the employees, as well as there will be a good effective production that could happen. And there is a lot of retention that could happen across the organization, because the employee will turn loyal, and they'll have a high level of motivation. Okay, so this plan also will help you to find this TNA, that is training need analysis or developmental needs. So these are all the objectives of career planning. The next one is career development. So this is a formal organization approach to ensure that the people with proper qualification experience are available when needed. So this actually helps the benefits of both the organization and the employee. Um, it satisfies. So this is what we call it as career development. There are different methods of planning and development methods. So one is a discussion with the knowledgeable individuals, one method. Then you have company materials, or what you call it as some operating procedures each organization will have or following it. The next one is performance appraisal system. The next one is workshop, personal development plans, certain kind of software packages, or career planning websites. So these are all different methods of career planning and development. So the next topic is performance appraisal. The next topic is performance appraisal. So before we proceed, what we will do is we'll take up few questions. We'll take up a few questions from the earlier question paper, so that you'll also get um, uh, some kind of an insight. You can try out. You can try out with this. I'll just share. We'll discuss. We'll discuss few questions, and we will move ahead with the topics. Okay, so this is related to job description. Which among the following are the parts of job description? So we know that job description completely talks about the job. Okay, who will perform, what will perform, and other things. So you can put in the chat box. You can put in the chat box and try. You can try. So the next question, which talks about statement one, is there it is no better to pay employees for little than to pay too much, and the statement two is competent employees will remain competent forever. So this is another sample question which you could probably try. Statement one is true and statement two is false. First option. The second one is statement two is true and one is false. Both statement are true or both statement are false. So this is another kind of thing. So the answer is one. So it is no better to pay employees for a little than to pay too much. It is right. And competent employees will remain competent forever is false. So this is again because this initial assumption is this could be correct, but it is completely wrong. This competent employees will remain competent forever because you know that based on the need, the competent keep on changing. The employee need to develop. So if they are not developing, then they will not be competent forever. So the next one is this. The next one is this. Um, which four are the factors influence the human resource management of an organization? What are the factors that influences HRM? First one is size of uh, workforce, employee expectation, composition of workforce, uh, political influence, change of technology. Yes, you're correct. Right. So the answer is this. So probably we'll think that the political influence will not be there. That political influence it is there. C. Okay. The next one is this. The next one is this. This is another kind. So I'm giving you all the possible options that you'll get. One is assertion and its reasoning. So one cannot be sure about the quality of appraisal on the basis of length of service. Another one is reasoning. Initial appraisal and promotional appraisal are done separately and differently since the length of service is different. Okay, initial appraisal and promotion appraisal are done separately and differently since the length of service is different. Okay, so we'll see what is the answer. So the answer is D. Okay, both are not correct because you know that promotion appraisal or any kind of appraisal is done only once. They don't do it separately. It does not depend on the length of the service. Okay, the another one is the quality of appraisal is based on the length of the service. No, it does not depend on length of the service because performance appraisal is a standard one. It is a standard one. Next question we'll see. Which of the following are covered under the scope of human resource management? Okay. Forecasting of human resource needs, yes. Replacement planning, yes. Human resource dynamics, yes. Human resource developmental planning, yes. Human resource audit. So what is the scope covered? Okay, whether all of them are there or any one or two is not there. So we will look on to the answer. Okay, so all the five are there under the scope. So forecasting can be done, replacement planning, HR dynamics, developmental planning, and audit is also there. The next question is this: which one of the following at the initial stage the Indian IT companies relying more for getting good IT professionals? What is the way by which they can get initial stage at the initial stage where they rely on good IT professionals? The next question we will see: HRM is viewed as a management process. Okay, HRM is so the difference. So you should know about the difference between a business process and management process. So management process deals with all the basic functions like planning, organizing, staffing, coordinating, controlling, all these things. Okay, the sequence of all those functions is what we call it as a management process. What is business process is? Business process deals with how you acquire the resources, let it be a raw material or machine, how you are going to acquiring all or procure all those resources, how you are going to manage those resources, how you are going to produce a product, and how you are going to sell the product. That is, we call it as a business process. So we need to have a clarity on that. So here the answer is this. Okay, motivation. We have B, one as acquisition, motivation, development, and maintenance. So the next one, the managerial function of staffing is more related to managerial function of staffing. So staffing is one of the functions of management, which is closely related to okay, so which is closely related to organizing. Okay, so this is one thing. So we'll move on to the next question. Okay, so the next one is staffing function does not include one is performance appraisal, placement, selection, and span of control. So when you look onto span of control, the span of control is number of people mm, a particular man can supervise. Take example, a supervisor, how many employees he can supervise. Okay, so that is span of control. You have narrow and wide span of control. Two things are there. Okay, so somebody is asking, we'll go to the previous slide. Yes. So staffing is more related to organizing. So here the staffing function does not include span of control. Okay, so staffing function does not include span of control. You will not determine how many people a particular guy will be able to manage. The next one is related to uh, on the job training. The on the job training does not include what? Okay, does not include what? On the job training does not include what? Okay, so the answer is sensitivity training. So on the job training will not include sensitivity training, because sensitivity training is an example of off the job training. The next one, you will see few more questions and we will continue. The next one is, which of the following concepts involves setting objectives and comparing performance against those objectives. So I'm fixing up certain objectives and trying to compare the performance against those objectives. So the answer is this: management by objectives. Management by objective, which we call it as management by MBO, which is called as MBO. What is this MBO? Is like the manager along with his team members meet together and take their own targets. Okay, take their own targets. So it is assumed that when all the team members achieve their targets, the whole organizational objective is reached. Okay, so since the targets are fixed based on the concern of the each employee, it is always assured that it is most effective because all will try to achieve their targets. The next one, we were just looking on to this career development cycle. So which stage is correct? Introductory, growth, saturation, decline, primary, secondary stage of self-actualization, pioneering stage, growth stage, maturity stage, and decline stage, exploratory stage, establishment stage, or maintenance stage. Okay, so what is the correct stage? So we'll look on to the answer. The cycle is this. So exploratory, establishment, maintenance, and stage of decline. So this is what we call it as a career development stage. So when you look onto the first one, introductory, growth, saturation, decline, that we call it as a product life cycle. That is product life cycle one. So here it is, the career development cycle is this: exploratory stage, establishment stage, maintenance, and stage. The next one is this question. It is mental condition. Mental condition. It is a mental condition or attitude of individuals and groups which determine their willingness to cooperate. What is their mental condition or attitude of individuals and groups which determine their willingness to cooperate? So it is a mental condition or an attitude of an employee here. So the answer is this. It is called as morale. It is called as morale. So when you look on to morale, it can be a positive morale or a negative morale, but morale has a direct relationship with the performance. or organizational, even it talks about organizational performance. So when a word called morale is there, you need to keep the word here, this keywords like mental condition or attitude of individuals. The next one is this. The next question is this. Which of the following terms include the task, duties, and responsibilities of a particular job? Of a particular job. Which of the following term includes the task, duties, and responsibility of a particular job? So when you look onto job evaluation, what I am trying to do is I am trying to find the worth of the job. I'm trying to find the worth of the job for job evaluation, where it will be helpful for me to formulate the compensation. When you look on to job enrichment, what happens is uh, I'm trying to add few more things. I mean, like a few more additional responsibilities will be given. Okay, that is additional responsibility, and even you will get a delegation also extra. The job enrichment, it is very similar to you getting a drive promotion. It is something like that. Drive promotion, you must be knowing. Promotion is given, but salary increment is not given. That is drive promotion. Okay, so job enrichment is more like a drive promotion. The next one, we know it is job analysis. So what you do in job analysis, you create all these things. Okay, you divide everything, task, duties, responsibility, everything, and from that I try to find what is job specification, what is job description. From that I get, okay, task and duties, responsibilities. Okay, the next one is job enlargement. When I say job enlargement, it is something like one person doing two jobs. I mean to say, a job which need to be performed by 2% is done by single person. For your clear understanding, I'm telling you that. Okay, so here it includes task, duty, responsibility. The answer is job analysis. So the next one is related to performance appraisal methods. Okay, performance appraisal methods. So here what is there? You have simple ranking. You mean to say that you just simply rank, okay, based on some criteria. That's it. Paired comparison, what you do is you check with the another one, comparing rating stand. That is paired comparison. If you take 360-degree appraisal, what does it mean? You get the feedback from all the people around you. They can be a supervisor, peer, or subordinate. Graphical rating, which gives you a picture, which gives you a complete picture about who's good, who's bad, or something like that. Okay, so the pairing will be, the answer will be this. Okay, so A. So the next one is the next question is this: which method in which method of performance appraisal the evaluator keeps a written record of significant events and how difficult employees behave during such event? Okay, so you will have a particular record based on which it is something like the evaluator's record. Okay, so example is this. Okay, so that is what we call it as critical incident method. Okay, so I think we will proceed with that theory and come back to the slide later. We'll finish up the remaining thing. So the next topic is performance appraisal. The next one is performance appraisal. So when you look onto performance appraisal, it is a process of evaluating the performance of an individual. I can say that it is a systematic. It is a systematic evaluation. Okay, it is a systematic evaluation of individual with respect to his or her performance of a job. Okay. The next, what are the main objectives of this? Salary increase, promotion, training, development, feedback, or that. Um, yes. So this chart shows the performance appraisal process. This shows performance appraisal process. Defining the objective of the appraisal, then you define the norms, design a program, implement it, then take the feedback, and post appraisal actions are done. So here the most important is this. Most important area for our exam is this. Most exam is this. Um, so we have different methods of performance appraisal. We have, so in that one particular question we have seen ranking method. So these are all the different methods, and these are all the related new methods of performance appraisal. So you have ranking, paired comparison, grading. So it is necessary that you should know what is what. Okay, so this is one thing. So the next one is potential appraisal. So what is meant by potential appraisal is to identify the potential of the employees, to identify the exact potential of the employees. Uh, the potential appraisal is used. So we have, the purpose is to inform the employees about their future prospects. So when they have a potential within them that can be explored, so it could help the management for succession planning. Potential appraisal is a very good thing which could help the organization for succession planning. We can update our training and recruitment activities. You can advise the work about enhancing the career opportunities. Okay, so these are all the purpose of potential appraisal. The next one is related to the techniques of potential appraisal. Techniques of potential appraisal, we have self appraisal, peer appraisals, superior appraisal, MBO, psychology and psychometric test, or their management games, leadership exercise. All those things are techniques of potential appraisal. So what is the difference between performance appraisal and potential appraisal is this. So here you evaluate the performance, here you evaluate the potential. Here you look on to the performance, whether a particular individual has attained the targets or not. Here you look on to the talent, I mean latent talent, which are not explored actually. Here the actual performance is measured. This is assessment of the future roles. Okay, so this will give you the current and the past performance. This will talk more about the future. So that is the difference between performance appraisal and potential appraisal. The next topic is related to trade unions. So that you must be knowing, like, no, that the trade union is an association of employees designed preliminary to maintain and improve the condition of employment of its members. But nowadays you look on to that, now the trade unions are on the other side, which is mostly driven by the political side. But as far as theory is concerned, these are all the definitions that we need to follow for the exams. So association of person and other things. So the nature of trade union. So we have the Act 1926 Act, Trade Union Act, as far as India is concerned. Okay, it can be formed temporarily or permanent. Okay, so the relation could be either with employer and workman, or between the workmen or between the employers. All these things are possible when you look onto trade union. Um, so when you look on the important key points related to trade union, or a combination of worker or employers. Next one is it could be permanent or temporary. Second point. Third one is it could include federation of two or more unions. That could also be possible. To regulate the relationship among workmen, between workmen or employees, this trade union can be used. So this is nature. So what is the principle of trade unionism? It underlines with the three principles. These are all the three principles of trade unionism. Unity is strength. First one, equal pay for equal work or for the same job. The next one is security of service. These are all the three principles of trade unionism. The next one is, why do workers join trade union? What are the things? Okay, so these are all benefits that an worker might get joining a trade union. So it gives you an economic security. It improves the bargaining power. The next one is you can inform, you can talk to the employers related to the job conditions, job environment, about your satisfaction. Everything can be talked directly. So it helps in a clear cut channel, communication channel for the workers, and it satisfies social needs, and it creates a sense of belongingness to the employees. Okay, so it will minimize the discrimination and increases the sense of participation, and enhances relationship. So these are all the reasons why workers join in a trade union. So we have different functions of trade union. These are all the functions of trade union. A militant function. So you can expect one question out of the trade union concept. So we have different functions: militant functions, fraternal function, social function, political function, ancillary functions. So what is militant function is this, or you call it as a protective function, so which ensures adequate wages, better working conditions, and better treatment to employees. So it will help the employees to fight against the management, in the form of strikes, boycotts, and other things. Helps to achieve higher wages. Okay, so all the basic thing which is assured for an employee. Okay, so those functions are militant or protective. So as the name says, it is protective function. The next one is fraternal functions. So it could provide financial and non-financial supports to the workers, extension of medical facilities, provision of education, recreation, and housing facilities is an upgraded functions, provision of religious and social benefits. You have to encourage sincerity and discipline among the workers, to provide opportunities for promotion and growth. So these are all related to fraternal functions. The next one is related to social functions. So this will help the employee to deliver their social responsibility as such. As such, okay, that is a social function. The political function is, that the parties, or I mean the unions, are always affiliated to political parties. So the responsibility of the political particular political party is also carried out by the trade unions. So here we need to remember this, focus on this area for the exam. So what are the different functions of trade unions? The last one is ancillary functions. So communication, welfare activities, education, research, all these things are ancillary functions. The next one is type and structure of trade union. So we have or they have two kind of purposes. One is reform. The next one is revolution. So what is reformers? To create a kind of reform in the economy, so it preserve the capitalist economy and maintain a competitive production based on the industrial relations. help to continue the existing social and other things. Okay, so the next most important thing is helps to improve the wages, working conditions, and other things related to the employee. That is reformist union. You have two versions of reformist. One is business union and uplift union. So what is business union? It takes care of the relationship between the employee and employer, and now goes for negotiations, and for collective bargaining, for getting things done for the welfare of the employees. The another one is uplift union. So as it says, reformist uplift. So they concentrate on the education, health, insurance benefits, and other related things, so that the employees will feel a sense of affiliation and social connectivity. So this is one form of trade union, that is reformist. The another one is revolutionary. The other one is revolutionary. They think of now removing or replacing the present system, which is not favorable for the employees, to a new system which could be mostly preferred by the employees, like that. So you have two types again here. So one is related to political thing, gaining power through political actions and other things. Another one is by destroying the existing economic system by revolutionary means. So these are all the two purposes of trade unions. The next one is structure. So we have this structure, different structure of trade union. So we have craft union, we have general unions. The next one is industrial unions are there, federation is there. Okay, so these are all few structures. Craft, so it is related to the workers, the category of same job. General union is related to any kind of an industry. Okay, so examples are also there. Industrial unions, we have federation. So these are all different structure, trade union structure. The next one is coming on to Trade Union Act 1926. So here there are a few set of instructions that you need to go through, because it is more legal aspects related to how you form, register trade unions, how many members need to be there, how you can change the name, or how to submit the annual returns. So all the things will be there. So this is another important area where you need to look on related to trade unions. So these are all the major principal trade unions in India. So we have AITUC, INTUC, we have HMS, we have CITU. All these things are principal or main trade union as far as India. So the next topic is collective bargaining. What is meant by collective bargaining? It is a process by which a group of employees negotiate with the employer in order to bring about the agreement that regulates working condition. So I could say that it is a process of negotiation. So it is a process of negotiation between employer and group of employees aimed at agreement um, to regulate working salaries, working conditions, benefits, and other aspects of workers' compensation and rights for workers. Okay, so when you look on to collective bargaining, the key word here is it is a win-win for both the sides. Collective bargaining usually goes with win-win with between employer and employee. So the another keyword here is negotiation. The another keyword is negotiation, and the collective bargaining is a legal process. Collective bargaining is a legal process that we need to know. Okay, so the next one is WPM, workers' participation in management. So this enhances the mental stability of the workers in the organization, because they also participate in decision making. So there are different levels of workers participation. uh, Okay, so there are different levels of workers' participation. We have information participation, okay, where you share the information and the information is given to you. The next one is consultative participation. Consultative participation talks about now if any kind of a decision is done, the opinion of the employees are also taken care, and they also form a team in that. The next one is associative participation. The associative participation is both employer and employee will discuss together and take a particular decision. The next one is employees participation in administration side. Okay, administration side of a decision is administrative participation. The next, the very highest level of WPM, that is workers participation, is decisive participation, where they even participate in no, the top level meetings related to that. So there are different forms of participation. These are all the different forms of participations. We have collective bargaining, work councils, joint management, councils and committees, board representations. All these things are different forms of participation. So we also should go through the objectives of workers' participation management. What are the different objectives? Okay, what are the philosophies underlying in the workers' participation? This is the prerequisites for effective participation of uh, employees in the management. The next one is group dynamics. What is meant by group dynamics? So we all know that a group is a combination of different individuals. Okay, so this refers to the attitudinal and behavioral characteristics of a group. How, as a group, how the attitude or the behavior is expelled. Okay, so in the group development process, we have four stages as developed by the philosopher Tuckman. You have forming, storming, norming, and performing. So forming of the group, after that, no, the exchange of ideas among the team members are all taking more of facilitation and information dissemination happens at this stage. The next one is they become normalized. I mean that the team members, no, they get connected with the common points and start working. That is performing. Okay, so this is the fourth stage in group development process. So any kind of a positive relationship will always help in a more of efficient productivity. The next one is related to organization politics. I have put a few things because sometimes they ask what is the definition, or they give in sentence whether it is true, false, or assertion and reasoning. This conflicts and organization politics. So we have different kinds of types of conflict. One is the relationship conflict, the task conflict, and process conflict. So this relationship conflict talks about interpersonal tensions among the individuals. The next one, task conflict, it is disagreement about the nature of work to be done. Process conflict is a disagreement about the about how work should be organized. So this is about related to how the work need to be done. Some conflict disagreement related to that is process. If there is a problem with the nature of task itself, okay, then it is task conflict. So this is types of conflict. So what are the approaches to manage conflict? We have these are all the ways: avoiding, accommodating, competing, compromising, and collaborating. These are all the approaches. And what are the ways by which conflict can be managed? So these are all the few other things. The next one is related to negotiation. So negotiation refers to the reconciliation, I could say, between the parties when there is a occurrence of any kind of a conflict. Okay, so both the parties will sit together and try to solve the conflict through resolutions. So this is a stage. These are all the 5 steps to negotiation process. We have preparation and planning, definition of ground rules, clarification and justification, bargaining and closure and implementation. These are all the 5 steps to the negotiation process. This is the 5 steps to the negotiation process. The next topic is related to organizational development. So organization development talks about a practice which enhances the organizational performance. So this needs a kind of a strategic view. Related how we are going to grow as an organization as such. So this is the history about OD, how it has happened. Actually, in the earlier stages, they had the laboratory training were done. So consider you want to grow, then training were given to the employees. Based on that, they accept and go. The next one is based on the action research or survey feedbacks. Okay, so you get feedbacks from the employees saying that we are going to go, and all this planned things can happen. The next one came into play with the workers' participation management was into this. The next one they were including the quality of work life, and now it is dealing with only strategic change, because change is only the permanent. Okay, so earlier it was all very difficult, but nowadays change has become, I could say, change has become the culture. Okay, so we have different organization development models. The three basic models are there: Levin's change model, we have action research model, and positive model. What is living change model is, so consider that you want to do a change or a shifting. You unfreezing means that you remove your restrictions, you remove your policies, procedure, so that a new model is adopted. Once the new model is adopted, then you implement all your rules, regulations, and everything. Then the system works. So during this transition, there could be a lot of deviations will happen. Okay, so this is a basic model of Levings. The next one is action research model. This is very simple as we go with research steps. Okay. So you identify what are the areas where we need to develop, then call those people, talk to them slowly, and report to them. Then it goes on. That is action research model. The next one is positive model. What is this positive model is, you create an information related environment where you keep on informing your employees related to the planned change. Okay, so that the acceptability is more from the employee side. So this is another model of organizational development. The next one is interventions. Interventions meant, what you try to do is you diagnose, understand the people, what are their potentials, whether they're behaviorals or favorable or not favorable towards the development of the organization. So this organization development cannot happen now as itself, because the individual interventions has to happen, group interventions has to happen, and process intervention has to happen. So individual interventions talks about how the employee, whether the employee has a positive attitude, whether he has a positive or optimistic approach towards the development. So that talks about individual thing. The next one is group interventions. We almost all the organizations works in a team. So you talk about the possible group development within the employees. Okay, if that is fine. Okay, the next one is a process. So what is a process? A process intervention deals with how consider in the operational area, whether I have the capability to take up the new extra production line. Okay, whether it is possible for me as an organization. So when all these interventions are done, of course the organization development will happen. So this is what I was talking about: individual interventions and group interventions. So example of an individual intervention is Zohari window, which tries to understand oneself. Okay. How it is something like evaluating their own self, evaluating their own selves. Okay, so they have something called as unknown to others and known to others, known to self, and unknown to self. Okay, so when you are known to others and unknown to others, no problem, because everybody knows, and you know something about you, and it is what you call it as a hidden spot. Okay, and the next one is nobody knows about anyone. That is unknown window, which is more risky. This is more risky area. Another one is blind spot, because others knows about you and you do not know about you. So how it is going to help us like this? So when you take an open window where everybody knows about you and you also know about you about particular points. Okay, So when you start expanding this particular window, what happens is now you become known to yourself well, and you become known to others also. So when it happens, now the conflict will never occur. That is the, this is one thing which is a methodology that is used for individual intervention. Jogari window. So this is third party intervention. It means like, you outsource people to intervene your process and give a kind of a diagnose. They diagnose all the reports and give you. So consultancies does most of this third party interventions. The next one is organizational change. So organizational change, consider that you want to expand your business or peep into a new product line and everything. So whenever there is a strategic decision that is going to take place in the business across, then of course the organizational change also happens parallelly. Okay, so the how it has to happen smoothly. Okay, so where are the areas the changes are possible, or this it could happen at 4 different levels. For the changes could happen at 4 different levels. One is human resource, functional resources, technology capabilities, or organizational capabilities. When you look on to what are the resistant to change, most of the time there is a resistance from the people, the employee side, or from the middle management side. No, so why there is a resistance is because of lack of understanding why we are changing. Different assessment methods could be there, self-interest and other things. The next one is what are different levels of change. You have individual level change. The employee has to change, make himself comfortable with the new technologies or new change that is expected. This is next one is group level change. The next one is organization level change. So these are all levels of changes. The next one is types of changes. Here change meant it is organizational change. Okay. Types of change, you have a strategic change, now complete as a shift of the strategic thing that you are changing. The next one is structural change, talks about organizational change. The next one is process oriented stage, implementation of new technology, new machineries into the production area. People oriented stage, there is a change in the leadership and other things, then the HR policies and other stuff changes. So these are all the types of changes. The next one is methods of introducing changes. These are all the methods of introducing the changes. Methods. These are all the different methods. So these are all the pressures of organizational change. What are the pressures that the organization should definitely change? These are all the pressures. It could be either from outside the organization or within the organization. These are all the different pressures. The next one is what are the forces for change and resistant to change at different levels. So in resistant of change, we have a different level. What are the resistance here? You can look on to here like organizational level, functional level, group level, and other stuffs here. And forces for change, these are all the forces which which forces you to change, like competitive forces, economic, political, global, social, like that. We have different forces for resistance towards a change. This is related to change agent. Change agent is one who's initiating the change in the organization. He can be either in the organization internally or outside the organization. So what are the roles of such kind of change agent? What are the skill required for a change? And what are the types of change agents? So these are all the types of change agents. The next one is Lewing's force model, which is very much related to the earlier model of Lewing's. Um, when is that resistant will happen? So you can just look onto the diagram, you can initially understand. So when there is a force for the change and resistant for a change, and now then there could be an inertia where there is a lot of pressure. Then what happens is force for change will be more and the resistance will become less, whereby actually after a period of after the period 2, you can say that the complete organization change can happen. That is about this model. There's a theory which talks about organizational change, how it actually happens. The next one is Kurt Lewing's process of plan change, unfreezing, moving, and refreezing. This is what we have seen earlier. What is that one? So, what is the future of organizational development? Okay, what is the organization development? Is it is more embedded in the organizational culture. So now it is almost the thing like now the change is permanent. So the people know that the organization will keep on changing its strategy and other things. So that since it has become a culture, now the organization development always happens, and now all the organizations are more related to the technology enabled and other things, so they are very happy in that. The next one is we have shorter OD cycle times. Earlier, the development, organization development took up a lot more change. Even the change, organization change takes up a lot of time, but now it is not there. We have only short cycle times. Now it is more of interdisciplinary. It is not only that, more of cross culture. We know that most of the business are global organizations. Okay, so these are all the future of OD. The next topic is international HRM. So when you do the business cross border across different countries, now we need to adopt different strategies according to the location, according to their beliefs, according to the government rules and regulations. All such activities across borders, we call it as international HRM. So what are the objectives or here? What are the objectives of international HRM? What are the why there is a need for international HRM? Why it is needed? And it talks about expatriates, how we are going to take care of them when he moves from home country to another country for working. Consider that after working there, how we are going to accommodate him in his home country, and other things related to expatriates. All these things are relevant here in IHRM. So these are all the characteristics of HRM, IHRM related to that. So this IHRM is more, it has to more align to the international business strategies. It has to align more with the international business strategies. So these are all the issues related to international HRM. We have a different culture, gauge, language, communication. Now, selecting a right person for foreign assignment is very difficult. And the next one is employee and their family adjustments, international assignments, political pressures. All those things are there when you look on. So this is the difference between international HRM and domestic HRM. What is the scope of this? What is the scope of that? So when you look onto the scope, it is very less here, and here it is more. Risk is more here in international HRM. Risk is less in now domestic HRM. Managing is very easy here, but managing here is difficult. Formulation of HRM strategy is very difficult here, but in domestic HRM it is limited, and the external factors which affects your HRM is very less here, but here it is more. So there are now you can just go through those differences. So these are all the challenges of international HR, challenges of international business deployment. These are all three main areas where the challenges can be sorted out. So deployment, knowledge and innovation dissemination, identification and development of at the global base. The next one is related to green HRM. So what is the green HRM is now the set of policies, practice and system that simulates a green behavior of companies, employees in order to create an environmentally sensitive, resource efficient and social responsible workplace and overall organization. What it says is how how an organization is more concerned about its environment. Okay, how we are going to adopt those strategies inside your organization which could be so friendly to the environment in which the business runs. So all HRM aspects related to that is what we call it as a green HRM. Okay, so these are all like how conservative you are, non-polluter, how you're going to make it happen, and what you're going to preserve. All other things related to this is what we call it as green HRM. So these are all the general reasoning for greening, like avoiding. These are all These have huge scope, like to avoid or minimize global warming, avoiding natural disasters, avoiding minimal health diseases, okay, harm to animals and other natural creatures. How I'm going to do all these things with respect to HRM, okay. So this could create a sense, no, this could create a sense of greenism among the employees, where it helps to increase even the loyalty or a kind of satisfaction among the employees. So when you look on to implementing green HRM, so you need to have the green competencies. Take example of one example of not using paper communications for unnecessary things, reducing the printouts in the organization. Okay, it does not happen all along, but no, this initiative has to come from all the stakeholders of the business. I mean to say that an employee should have his own sense of adaptability. That is what we call it as a green attitude and green behavior. Okay, so they need to accept that now I need to be very responsible to the organization, like that. So it will increase the employee awareness, lower the cost, because consider I'm not going to take papers, just example paper printouts and other things unless it is necessary. Okay, so better employee engagement, employee retention will be there, and environmental friendly initiatives can be done. So these are all the green initiatives for HR, a green building where you have a recycling and waste disposals, conservations of the office, paperless office, and everything is possible here. So these are all the effects of green HRM. These are all the effects of green HRM, the employee motivation, engagement, create competitive advantage for opportunities, reduce labor turnover, improve the health of the workforce. All these things are there. Okay. So this is the end of green HR. Okay. I think I'm done. I think I'm done. Any clarifications you can, if you want, you can put in the chat box. Any clarifications you want, anything else, you can put in the chat box. We'll try to answer. Hari Bhaskar sir, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Sir, I'm done.
Yes,
If any queries are there, we'll answer, else we can wind up, sir.
yes, sir. Okay, sir. If any queries are there, they can post it in the WhatsApp group also. I'll
Yeah.
forward it to you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your thoughtful session. I hope this will be a very helpful to the participants to crack their exams.
If it is
Thank you
helpful,
so much.
I'll be very happy, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank
Okay,
you,
sir. Thank you
participants.
so
We'll
much.
meet
Thank
in
you
the
so
next
much.
session.
Sure, sir.
Yes,
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you,
yes,
sir.
you can end from your side.
Okay, sir. I'll end the session.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, participants. See you. All the very best for the exam.